This is a relay project.
Real Talk starts right now. Here's Ryan Jesperson.
Does Speaker of the House Greg Fergus need to resign? Is 14 to 25 an appropriate age range for a youth mingler? I can't wait to pick John's brain on that one. Could we see peace in the Middle East, and can the Edmonton Oilers beat the Dallas Stars to earn a berth to the Stanley Cup Finals? These are the questions that we will dig into, the questions we will endeavor to answer today as we connect with the Titan of Talk, Charles Adler, presented by Tice Automotive Consulting. That coming up in just a moment. We've got a lot locked and loaded. Brinley sent us a positive reflection from the Outback, Johnny. I haven't even told you about this one yet because it was emailed into the show this morning, and it has replaced the positive reflection that we had locked and loaded. But we have a real feel-good story from Brinley coming up a little bit later on today. Our tradition presented by Kubi Energy to kind of start you off with a, start your week off with some positivity, to harness that positive energy. Bit of a play on words, obviously, with what our friends at Kubi Energy do. And, of course, a great way and to maintain that optimism, although I don't know how you're feeling on the heels of a long weekend, a short week. Does it put a little bit more of a hop, skip, and a jump in your step to start the week on a Tuesday, pal?
Not really.
No, not so much. You've been burning the candle at both ends. We'll get it. We got to loop in Adler before we start talking about Game 7.
Of course.
That's going to timestamp this episode, but sorry, not sorry. And again, some of you in good fun wrote in and said, what is this, some sort of a hockey podcast? But once your city's team advances to the third round of anything, you're bound to talk about it for a little bit. And I know that our live tuning audience watching the live stream on YouTube, and of course checking in on the Mixler live streaming audio app presented by California Closets, I'm sure we'll have lots to get excited about. This episode wouldn't be happening without our friends at Rello. This is Alberta's top real estate school, and we loved that message that we got just last week. We got a new testimonial, by the way, coming up a little later on in the show. This testimonial thing is catching on. We love this. But JR wrote in to tell us that they'd been working on getting their real estate license. They went with one of the other guys, one of the other real estate schools, I guess. I don't know which one. The only one I've ever heard about is Rello. That's the one everybody goes to, but JR told us exactly why. Wrote their exam once, flunked. Wrote the exam twice, flunked. Heard about Rello on Real Talk, signed up, and then passed the exam with flying colors. Also, JR says, listen, they've got those expert instructors online ready to help you out anytime. JR now working in real estate. Congratulations. We loved that email to talk@ryanjesperson.com. You can sign up for Rello today. Learn what you need to know, pass your exam, get certified, and launch your career with unlimited earning potential. Rello.ca, that's RELO.ca. Don't forget the promo code Ryan100 knocks $100 off their Alberta residential and commercial real estate bundles. That's Ryan100 at Rello.ca.
14 to 25, eh?
14 to 25. Oh, my gosh. Should we bring in Charles before we get into this?
Gosh.
This is so the background for this. Can you call up the images that we have? Now, this event has since been canceled.
Oh, it has?
Yeah, it's since been canceled.
Well,
this was,
God.
these constituency associations. So there's, in our home province of Alberta, there's 87 different ridings, right? Yeah. And so the United Conservative Party for Lacombe and Ponoka, their constituency association, wanted to throw a youth spring dance and social at the Clive Community Hall. And so they advertised it to be coming up on June 8th from 7 to 11 for ages 14 to 25. And I don't know, at first glance, I think most people would go kind of do what Johnny just did. Like, what?
Why? This all could have been salvaged if you just put 18.
Yeah.
Well,
25. But then it's then it's not a youth mixer. I think it's got to be like 12 to or 14 to 17 or 12 to 17 or whatever the youth. What are the youth ages for mingling?
Yeah,
I'm trying to think back to
12 to 17.
My church youth group days. But even then, they kept the junior high and the high school separated. Mm-hmm. So here's where the crap kind of hit the fan, so to speak, is Carrie Shima, who's an RCMP officer who's been on the show before. We're going to play you a clip from when Carrie was on the team or on the show, a couple of Julys ago. Mm-hmm. But from his personal account, which does have RCMP in the title, but it's not an official RCMP tweet. I want to be clear about that. But Sergeant Shima works in the ICE unit, which is like Internet Child Exploitation. So he's unfortunately very experienced in this and obviously a little bit more attuned. When things stink, people like Sergeant Shima are going to notice them first. So he says, this right here is a problem, and he shines light on the invitation to this. Says, first of all, 25-year-olds are not youths. Number two, who planned this, wanting to see 14-year-olds and 25-year-olds dancing together? And then he goes on to say, number three, the ICE unit is overworked with cases. The last thing my teams need is a sanctioned dance encouraging adults to cavort with teens.
This reeks of arranged marriages.
It does, right?
That's what immediately I thought.
So a friend of mine shared this with me this weekend, and she just said, small town Berta. This was before the event was canceled. It's since been canceled. Charles Adler, presented by Tice Automotive Consulting, joining us the first episode of Every Week. What was your very first thought when, without context, I sent you the invitation to that event?
It was the same as what Johnny just said. I was thinking about arranged marriages, and I was thinking, in some parts of the world, they arrange marriages, 25-year-old guys and 14-year-old girls, and in some parts of the world, that's good. I didn't think it was good in Alberta, anywhere, small town, big city. I mean, it's morally obtuse. Some would say dumb. I'm not necessarily talking about the speaker in the House of Commons. It's another story we'll leave for later.
Yeah, we'll get to
that. This idea of having 25-year-olds labeled as youth, everyone's a youth, everyone between the ages of 14 and 25. I mean, really? I mean, do we need to have any enlightenment about basic biology to know that's just not the right thing to do? And I'm glad that Sergeant that you had on a couple of Julys ago, I'm glad he weighed in on this, because here's a person who's involved in serious investigations of what can happen when 25-year-olds and 14-year-olds get together.
Yeah, it's, this, I don't know. I mean, I guess, number one, we point out the event has been canceled, but that doesn't take away from the fact that somebody thought it was a great idea in the first place. I don't know if it's also worth pointing out that this is a constituency association. A lot of people are saying that this is a United Conservative Party event, which technically it's a CA event, but you have to imagine that as news of this made its way up to the top to party brass, and I'm not just talking about the Premier's office, I'm talking about the party leadership, the party brass. I would imagine that everybody had one of those immediate onset headaches, because it becomes a bigger problem for the entire party, even if this was like one or two people in Ponoka or Clive's really bad idea.
Well, this is another one of these things where, when you see it, you think this is what another party, let's say the NDP, this is what they would make fun of. If the NDP wants to portray the UCP as the party of hillbillies, here you go, guys.
Yeah. Gilles says in the live chat, middle schools don't even let high school students attend their dances, obviously, right? Like,
yeah.
Wasn't that always kind of the joke in high school? Is like there was always the one guy that returned grade 12 to play football.
Of course.
And even those guys were like barely allowed in the dances, if at all.
Not only that, I'm a DJ, and around this time of year, I'm not booked for a lot this year, but when we do school dances, they kick out people because older kids, the ones who've graduated the year before, or kids who are clearly older, will try to sneak in, and they're kicked out for good reason, because this should be 12 to 17-year-olds. This should not be people who are already adults out there in the world. So when I saw this, again, I'll just say it. It screamed arranged marriage. What I saw was older guys, younger girls. That's immediately what I pictured.
There's not 25-year-old women showing up at these mixers.
No.
There's just
I got to say that when it comes to, we've been doing this for a little while, and when it comes to the human condition, Johnny scores big time. But for those people out there who are looking to book a human being, right? Let's say you've got an event where you're just not sure, right? There are not enough human. You want to make sure there's at least one real good human soul at the facility, at the event. Johnny Infamous is a real good human being.
Moral score high, IQ score medium.
Come on. But what about this? So James in our chat says, as was pointed out to me, James says the youth wing of most political parties in Canada have an age range of 14 to 25. I did have one friend who anonymously passed along a note. The city of Edmonton's youth council is 12 to 24.
Okay.
So, like, I don't know, and that's not affiliated with the United Conservatives. I don't know. People will say, well, the work of the youth council is different. They're coming together to have the voice of the youth, and it's not a mingler, and it's not a dance, and it's not a community hall. I don't know. Is 12 to 24 an appropriate age? I mean, now are we going to say that 12-year-olds can't be around 24-year-olds? Or are we just saying that 14-year-olds can't dance with 25-year-olds?
We can throw one more thing into the campfire here. When pollsters talk about youth vote, obviously people under 18 aren't allowed to vote. So when pollsters or national pollsters, provincial pollsters, whatever, are talking about the youth vote, oftentimes they're talking about people between the ages of 18 and 24, and sometimes 18 to 29. So if we want to offer excuses for this thing, there you go, one more.
Yeah. Jillian says, I teach junior high. High schoolers do not attend, nor are they welcome at our student dances. Travis wants us to point out, he says, again, another story, not a drag queen. Again, fair enough, Travis. So, yeah, you can let us know. I mean, I don't really know. I feel like we've maybe already spent too much time on this, but I just wanted to throw it out there. Had the event not been canceled, we might be spending a little bit more time on it because people would be wanting to know who are the power players involved in this and what are they going to say about it. What does the premier think about this? But it was swiftly canceled. I would imagine that was a quick conversation.
Not only that, who's doing the graphics here, the photo? This is not a great flyer.
Describe it for the podcast listeners. It's kind of like Comic Sans.
Yeah, it looks like somebody drew this with a marker.
Well, they're trying to reach the youth, dude. This is youth outreach. This is exactly what this is. Okay, maybe to a more, although, listen, if this was, I don't want to say to a more serious story, because if that was still happening, that is a pretty serious and ridiculous situation.
Yeah, that's the good news, Mr. Timekeeper.
Yeah,
so I love it every time. Oh, we're spending too much time on this. What happened to you, Ryan?
No, I'm just saying, everybody agrees. The conversation has reached its point where everybody agrees.
You're having a spontaneous, I don't care if you're at a diner or at a dance hall. If you're having a spontaneous conversation, people are enjoying the conversation. There's no such thing as a time out. Time out again.
Thank you. What are we going to get you a whistle now? You want a whistle? Start wearing a striped shirt when you show up every week. Presented by Tice Automotive Consulting. So we got this.
Panel will be here in just a moment to analyze what just took place between Johnny,
we need
Ryan,
someone to come on and analyze Adler analyzing the stories. That would be, although you're analyzed every week. I don't know if you listen to the Flamethrower on Fridays presented by our friends at the DQs of Northwest Edmonton and Sherwood Park. Your appearances here are certainly analyzed weekly by Real Talkers. And keep
obviously,
it coming,
I need
baby.
Deep penetrating analysis from Albertans. And every Friday we get that right here.
Yeah, there you go. So you and I both got the email today, as with anybody else on the Conservative Party communications list. That could be you. Anyone can sign up for this. But Chris Warkentin, Deputy Whip of the official opposition, is demanding for the second time in a few weeks. You'll remember when we talk about Speaker Greg Fergus, everybody, this is the Speaker of the House. He's a Liberal MP, but he's serving in this role, to be a nonpartisan role. Speaking of referees, that's exactly his job. And he's the one that kicked Pierre Poilievre out of the House. You remember this a short while ago for calling Justin Trudeau wacko, saying his policies were wacko. This after Trudeau had thrown some barbs, and everybody knows that story by now. Well, now the Conservatives say that House of Commons Speaker Greg Fergus, quote, has once again shown his disregard. We can break the rules and actually show my email inbox on this one, Johnny. Shown his disregard for the neutrality required in his role. The Liberal Party of Canada advertising a summer evening with the Honourable Greg Fergus scheduled. Now, he says the Honourable, implying the MP, right? They don't say Speaker Greg Fergus, but still.
Is this a dance?
Scheduled for June 4th, just across the river from Parliament Hill. The Speaker has shown, say, the Conservatives no intention of remaining nonpartisan. This because of the promotion of this event. Speaker Greg Fergus talks about Pierre Poilievre in a negative light, talks about his concerns around Poilievre's leadership. So say the Conservatives, this proves that he is unfit for his role as the nonpartisan Speaker of the House. Do you think he needs to resign, Charles?
I think he does. I think this too was, politically just not intelligent for him to do a video, and the video was for a partisan event. It was to make some remarks about the outgoing provincial Liberal leader in Ontario. For him to wear the Speaker's uniform, that's just not on. If you're speaking as a former Ontario Liberal or whatever, friend of the Ontario Liberal, that's kind of one thing. But if you're speaking as the Speaker of the House of Commons, which is the people's house, which is everybody's speaker. He's got a bit of a tin ear. I think he needs a real talk timekeeper in his ear.
Well, you're talking about like when he apologized for the video where he was basically paying tribute to the outgoing Ontario Liberal Party leader. So he apologized in December for that. He said at that time when he asked MPs for a chance to redeem himself, he said, "I'll resign if you like," but he asked for a chance to redeem himself. He stays on in the role. Now, everyone has their own opinion on whether or not Pierre Poilievre deserved to be kicked out of the House, whether or not there was a double standard, whether or not Trudeau's comments to Poilievre were equally as offensive or unparliamentary. So this one now, where they're throwing this event, he's promoting the event, he's talking about Poilievre in a negative light. It kind of does feel to me, to be honest. And I've seen other speakers criticized for some of the same stuff. Certainly in Alberta. I mean, out of Three Hills there. Why am I drawing a blank on Nate's last name? Oh my gosh, that's embarrassing. But everybody knows Speaker Nate, who I'm talking about. He apologized a couple of times for stuff that I thought was much, to be honest, more bland than this. I feel like when you accept the role of speaker, you're kind of like biting the bullet in the sense that you know that you can't pull out your flamethrower. You got to like kind of take a back seat to the partisan stuff. I understand that he has to do some fundraising. Obviously, he wants to keep his job as an MP. But at the same time, I don't know. It feels to me like the Conservatives have a legit argument here. And I feel like this is kind of the third strike. I feel like he should resign, to be honest with you.
Have you hit 50 yet, brother?
What are you talking about?
Well, I just you start to draw blanks on names when you hit 50, and I just wanted to let you know it's no big deal. You don't start shooting blanks. You don't stop shooing blanks till later. But
let's not talk about that.
You start drawing blanks.
Nathan Cooper, to whom I owe an apology. That's for forgetting Nathan Cooper's name. But the Alberta, the Speaker of the House, and obviously in the Alberta legislature for quite some time, out of Olds, Didsbury, Three Hills. But if I would have seen him, I'm sure if I would have called him Nate or Nate Dog, I'm sure he would have been fine with that. I'm sure.
But it's true. I mean, people over the age of 50 start talking about this. Like, how come I'm needing somebody else in the conversation to finish sentences for me? To remind me about names, and it starts happening to a lot of people after the age of 50.
Well, I think it's Bruce in the live chat that deserves the shout out, because Bruce was helping me out here in the chat, pointing out that it was Nate Cooper. Bruce. I'm sure that staffers that are listening to this will let Cooper know that I forgot his last name, and I'll probably have to buy him a beer next time I see him out, which is fine. Alberta Girl says nobody wants the job of speaker. Alberta Girl might be onto something. Some people love it. Like, I thought Gene Zwazdeski in Alberta was a magnificent speaker. It was easy for the Zwaz, as they called him, because he had been an MLA for two different parties. So for him, it was like the bipartisan thing was maybe a little bit easier. May he rest in peace, one of the all-time greats in Alberta politics. But yeah, I don't know. I kind of feel like he crossed the line here and he should resign.
Can we just speak some truth here, because we call this real talk? Everyone in the House of Commons, everyone in the Alberta legislature, everyone in politics is partisan. So I get a little bit, there's no real good word for it, or maybe there is, and maybe I'm just over 50 and drawing a blank. But there's something odd to me about dwelling on whether or not partisan politicians are partisan politicians. If you're not partisan, politics ain't your game. If you're not partisan, hockey isn't your game. If you're an Oilers fan, you have nothing to apologize about. Gloat until the cows come home. The team won. There's nothing to apologize for. If you're a fan, you're supposed to be a fan. It's called being partisan.
Yeah, well, okay. Well, I mean, you could be a little more subtle if you want to just steer us over to talk about the Oilers, Chuck. I mean, but here's the thing. No one's criticizing an MP for being partisan. They're criticizing the Speaker for being partisan. Yeah. But this also comes back to my whole thing about someone will say Adler's biased, Jespo's biased, your guests are biased. They go, yeah, so is everybody else. So are you. When people email into the show to say that you're biased, it's because their bias collides or clashes with yours. So everybody's biased.
You know what we call people who don't have strong opinions, who don't have biases?
Boring.
We call them boring.
Yeah.
You know what we do with people who are boring on this show? We don't invite them to the show.
This is true. I'll tell you what. We'll get to Oilers talk after this. Plus, there's some other more serious stuff I want to get to. But like, obviously, Johnny was up late last night, and so we just wanted to ease into this one to see how you were doing. But I want to remind everybody that Charles Adler appears on Real Talk Weekly, courtesy of Tice Automotive Consulting. This is a small business that has it all figured out. Tice knows that buying a vehicle should be fun, and they can make that happen. So here's the deal. Tice is for you if you're a little hesitant to walk into a car dealership. You either don't like the pressure tactics, or you feel like you're going to get ripped off, or maybe you just don't have time. Maybe you're busy as hell at your job, with your family, with your social calendar, and you could use somebody else to help you out. So here's the deal. You go to ticeautomotive.com, you get in touch with them, you let them know basically what you're looking for. You can tell them the type of vehicle, you can tell them the color of vehicle, definitely tell them your price range. If you're looking for a used vehicle, how many kilometers are you comfortable with having on that vehicle? Tice goes out and finds it for a reasonable fee. You can see the whole business model sketched out on the website, ticeautomotive.com. They'll even deliver it right to you. And here's the deal. The owner, Chris, is a mechanic himself, so he does a personal inspection before he drops that car off to you, before he buys that car on your behalf. I recommend Tice Automotive Consulting at ticeautomotive.com. Our thoughts are with fellow Canadians in BC, in Alberta, in Manitoba right now, dealing with wildfires. Our friends at Complete Care Restoration have made for more than 25 years, they've made it their business to restore properties and rebuild peace of mind. Their teams have been working around the clock, helping communities impacted by the 2023 fires get back on their feet, and they're ready to respond 24/7 this fire season. Heaven forbid, if disaster strikes, don't forget to get in touch with Complete Care Restoration. And we want to give a shout out to our friends at Athabasca University. They've got a perfect solution for everybody in Canada dreaming of a post-secondary journey but finding hurdles in their way. Whether it's geography, you don't live near a university or college, whether it's financial barriers, whether it's just your schedule. You've got kids, or you got a full-time job, or you're caring for your parents, or maybe someone else you love. You can open your options with the online offerings at Athabasca University. Check out athabascau.ca to learn more about the AU Advantage, including financial supports, and a shout out in particular to the Athabasca University MBA. More people are talking about that. You want to make headway in your business career? Look no further than Athabasca U. So the Edmonton Oilers off to the Western Conference Final to take on the Dallas Stars after a convincing Game 7 win against the fellow Canadians in Vancouver, the Vancouver Canucks. Yeah. John Hicks, obviously you were overseeing the big party in the square, just about a half block from our downtown Edmonton studio. How was everybody feeling for this road game? It seemed like I saw the one guy they kept showing on Sportsnet with his tarps off. He had his oil field gear tarps off. He looked ready to party.
Nervousness, but as the game went on, you could tell, and this is what we needed, right? That decisive win in Game 6, and then no team had done 2 in a row, so everyone nervous, but you could tell 45 minutes of domination. And then what do the Canucks always do? It was written like a storybook. They're the comeback kids, right? And we got really nervous at the end. But hey, I know that both fan bases are super savage. The online stuff got really crazy. But I just want to say, the Canucks are a very well-coached team. And with their number one goalie and maybe Brock in the lineup last night, we might have seen something different, a closer game, or maybe even them taking it. So just mad respect. Tocchet just did an amazing job with them. I mean, he even said in the post-game interview, he was like, these players brought respect back to the jersey. And I know a lot of people out there hate the Canucks, but they really did. That team turned around 180. So for us to beat them, that's a big deal, and they're gonna be wearing that as they go up against an even harder. Oh my gosh, Dallas is gonna be. This is gonna be a crazy
Dallas. Chuck, I didn't know this. I saw this stat post online yesterday. The Dallas Stars became the first NHL club in the expansion era to defeat the most recent 2 Stanley Cup champions in their first 2 playoff rounds. So beating Vegas in round 1, beating Colorado in round 2, they've dethroned the 2 most recent champs Dallas has. So certainly a stacked team ready to go. But I know you were texting me during the game last night. It didn't disappoint, man.
Well, I don't want to lay this on Rick Tocchet because he was a great player and he's a great coach, and he has brought respect to the Canucks organization in Vancouver. But and there's always a big fat but in what this biased personality has to say. And here's the big fat but: who's the coach? Who is coaching the Canucks to be miserly with shots on goal? I mean, the Oilers are ahead 3-0 in the middle of the second period, and the Canucks at that point still hadn't put 15 shots on the net. I mean, I don't have to be the second coming of Foster Hewitt to know that if you don't shoot, you don't score.
Yeah, it was weird too, especially considering that obviously Stuart Skinner had sat out a couple of games, was really struggling. So he comes back in Game 6 in like a do or die game, literally for the Oilers, and the Canucks put, I think, 15 or 16 shots on him all game.
I know.
And then same deal, fewer than 20 shots. I don't know the exact number, fewer than 20 last night.
Yeah.
So like under 20 shots in back-to-back games on a goalie that's been struggling, you got to wonder where was the game plan?
It's good for him that, you get benched and then you come back and you have 2 wins, but was it enough? Like, did he see enough action? I don't think he did. Like, when you're standing at I've never played goal. I've never played hockey like much. I took power skating and played a little rec, whatever. But like when you're standing at one end of the ice for the majority of the time, and then all of a sudden it's bam, 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 shot.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if you're getting the workout you need. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. I don't know.
I don't have a degree in stats from Athabasca University.
Nice one.
So I'm hoping somebody out there listening or watching does, so they can tell us whether any team in the history of the National Hockey League has won a Game 7 in the Stanley Cup playoffs with 20 or fewer shots on net.
Yeah, I don't know.
I can't remember a Game 7 like this. Remember when, was it the Avs or Detroit got blown out 7-0? But this was one of those games where it didn't feel like a Game 7 at all. It was total domination. But respect to the Canucks, they were a hard team. Like, they were a really hard team to get around for. I mean, 1-goal games
7
the whole
games,
way.
Man. No team won 2 in a row until 6 and 7. Yeah.
Last night, props to the Oilers, man. You got McDavid, Draisaitl blocking shots. Like, I don't know what Darnell said to the bench there. They were, at one point, he was like giving them a sermon, but he just had an incredible few games there too. People always knocking on Darnell. He was great in the last few games. So, but this Dallas team is deep. This is gonna be a war coming up.
Yeah,
this is gonna be crazy.
Dallas definitely looks like it could win the cup for sure. Jake Ottinger,
he's scary good.
You've got obviously one of the best D-men in the game, and Heiskanen, and when you start rolling through the lines, and then you see that they've got like
Ben's an animal.
All these guys like Sagan's on the third line. You got Pavelski. There's a whole bunch of Dallas Stars, Chuck, like sort of like the guys that if they win this year, you think they may be tempted to hang him up. I think of like Joe Pavelski, like go out on top kind of idea. But there's a few of those guys that haven't won, and it would be kind of Ryan Suter, I think, on the blue line, right? So, yeah, it'll be good. I
still give the Oilers the edge because I still believe that Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl, more than ever that I've seen them in the past, and naturally I've been following them for the last few years, they are absolutely possessed. These guys want to hug the Stanley Cup badly.
Yeah. Another stat, all 4 teams now in the final have not won a cup in over 20 years. So Florida hasn't won at all. I think Dallas was like 94, 96. Islanders like 97. So these are 4 teams who've
Rangers 94 with Messier. Yeah.
And so 4 teams that have been in over 20-year droughts. They're all hungry. This is going to be an amazing final for the Stanley Cup.
Yeah.
Well, what is it about these people across our country and the United States who say, if my team isn't in it, I'm not interested? How can you be a hockey fan and not interested in what we're about to see with these 4
Ask
hungry
Calgary.
clubs?
But I watched the game in Calgary, and there's a lot of people in Calgary watching the game. I mean, obviously, I got into an interesting conversation with some people. They were like, there's the idea of like, this is the Alberta team. And then I know that not everybody feels the same way, right? I was telling them, they go, well, what do you think people in Edmonton would do? Like if the Flames were going on a long run and Edmonton was out, and I'm going, well, they kind of have the ABC thing in Edmonton, anybody but Calgary, but not everywhere. Like I remember, in 2004, the Flames went to the final, and there were some Flames car flags in Edmonton. And then in 2006, when the Oilers went to the final, separated by a lockout. Like Alberta teams went to back-to-back finals. There were some Oilers car flags in Calgary, but I don't know. I get it. I get it. Like if my team's out, I'm not 100% in anymore.
Some big national brand was asking me last night if the Oilers are now Canada's team. I said, yeah, Canada minus Calgary.
Okay, yeah, that might be true. It just might be tough for the Flames. It was a tough year in Calgary, and it might be tough for them to watch Connor and Leon do their thing. But I don't know. There are, like Johnny said, there are those storylines. Like the Dallas storyline is interesting, and they're just such a deep team. It's sort of they sort of feel like that. I don't know. I don't want to say anything. I'll pick Edmonton to win the series, but I wouldn't be surprised if Dallas did.
There's some Oilers Dallas hatrid, is there not?
You think in the 90s, like the Oilers Dallas rivalry in the playoffs was massive, and so I think it's pretty cool. And then I think who in Toronto. I mean, I know that Toronto, it's tough for them. They're distracting themselves. They hired Chief. They hired Craig Berube as the head coach. They got a story to focus on here. They're looking ahead to next year. But Connor McDavid is a Toronto product. Wouldn't
Richmond
you?
Hill, just north of Toronto,
right? Just to watch.
Finest places in Ontario where I got to do country music, calling myself Billy Nelson. I love Richmond. I love Connor McDavid.
You were Billy Nelson on the air?
Yeah. Well, I had other names for the other jobs I was doing. I was a bit
hang on, you were using the same voice, using different names on different stations?
Yes, in Ontario, different formats.
Well, okay, so Billy Nelson was the country
rock radio.
Who was the rock persona?
News.
Who was the rock persona?
Well, the rock persona, I was Charles Adler. That's who I am. But I wasn't Charles Adler when I was offered this Sunday gig to do country music and come in on Wednesdays and do 1 hour of spots, commercials, selling various automotive products, including a lot of big, scary trucks.
Wow. How about this from
Billy
Jill? We happen to know, because Jill's a beloved regular in our live chat. I know she hails from Montreal. She says, I would never cheer for Toronto in anything. She says, I even rejoiced when they lost their Olympic bid. I'm that petty, says Jill.
Toronto media is pretty savage, too. Like, I already saw them tweeting last night, like, oh, Dallas has punched their ticket to the final.
Oh, boy.
Easy sweep here. And it's just like, oh, come on.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I don't know about that. We'll see. But, okay, listen.
What's Toronto's excuse, by the way? They haven't won a Stanley Cup since 1967. They've got more money than God.
Yeah.
I mean, what's up with that?
Well, I mean, I don't know. It's fabulous. I just hope it keeps happening.
It's a curse.
I know. Yeah. I'm not crying about it. I just wonder. It's kind of an intellectual curiosity. Why are the Maple Leafs such stinkers?
I do. I mean, it would be cool. It's like when the Chicago Cubs finally won. It's like you just see a team that's like suffered.
Like, give them a bone.
But it's just kind of fun because I just like when I see people, sort of saying, like is Connor McDavid the best player in the world? And then Toronto is always like, is it McDavid or is it Austin Matthews? And I just sort of feel like I just prefer when McDavid is able to trump Matthews and everything, and to sort of keep the question a rhetorical one.
When people are like, is it Samsung or is it iPhone? Like, we all know the fucking answer. The iPhone's the best
iPhone,
phone.
obviously.
Like, come on.
Yeah. Although people that are hardcore on Samsung are like hardcore on it, man.
I'm hitting the buzzer.
What's that?
New topic. New topic.
The timekeepers hit the button. Okay, well, I want to read this email from Colin. The subject line, I'm a bit ticked off. Colin sent me this email yesterday to talk at ryanjesperson.com. Ryan, I'm writing because I'm a bit ticked off at you and your team. We've been hearing about Friesen Brothers now for a few years, about their sourdough, about the prepared seasonal dinners, and in particular about the beef short ribs, Ryan. Well, we've been in Edmonton a lot lately for kids' sports, and we had to drop into Friesen Brothers to see what all the fuss was about. And it was fantastic, and we loved it. My daughter loved it, but nowhere do I ever recall you and Johnny talking about perhaps the tastiest thing I've ever had in months. It's fairly delinquent. The ginger cookies, says Colin, in the bakery are so exceptionally soft and chewy and tasty and just the right amount of gingery. The cinnamon buns are awesome, but Jespo, they're nothing compared to the ginger cookies. Now we are doubly pissed that Friesen Brothers doesn't have a Calgary location. Come on, 70 years, still family owned, and they couldn't sneak down into Calgary. Your continued sponsorship should be conditional on Southern expansion. Take care, Team Real Talk and Team Friesen. We love you guys. That from Colin.
Best thing about listening to post-game on a radio station I won't name after
Thank you, John.
the game last night, as soon as they said, and with that, the Oilers have stamped their ticket to the Western Conference Final, boom! On comes your favorite host, Jespo, with a Friesen
Talking about
commercial.
Friesen Brothers. We only tell you about places and tell you to go places and spend your money when we believe in the places, when we love the places. And so sue me, Colin. I've underrepresented the ginger cookies. My bad. I've been obsessing over the cinnamon buns. My bad. Anyway, you'll find Friesen Brothers in 17 different Alberta locations, proudly Alberta grown and Alberta owned. You know, our friends at California Closets are earning that same praise from Real Talkers. I read you a testimonial just last week. This is just going to turn it. We'll have to do separate shows where you're just writing in, telling us that the places we tell you are fantastic are actually fantastic, like Beverly did with an email. Beverly reached out to California Closets, requested that free consultation, figured she couldn't afford them, but when she saw the 3D renderings and then saw the price, well, guess who she hired? She said she couldn't believe that she couldn't believe that the California Closets quote was actually the most reasonable, the most affordable, and it comes with a lifetime warranty. So why not be like her? Go get that free consultation scheduled today at californiaclosets.ca. And before we get back to Adler, I wanted to remind you what's going on with Pathways Alliance's global energy demands change. The world is demanding responsibly produced energy, and that means that 6 of the largest oil sands producers, the 6 largest, have come together to work with provincial and federal governments. It's the Pathways Alliance, a net zero emissions from operations plan by way of carbon capture and storage. You can learn more about it by checking out pathwaysalliance.ca. Chuck, are you a ginger cookie guy?
Absolutely. But I will never tag anyone for hyping cinnamon buns, cinnamon rolls.
I mean,
because my mom was washing the floors of a bakery when we were very, very new in this country. It's one of the jobs she had. And the reason I loved that particular job is she was able to get seconds, the day olds, and having day old cinnamon buns the following day was one of the best treats of my young life.
Amazing. I love it. Hey, I wanted to talk about some international news, obviously a little bit more serious. This audience can pivot. We do it all the time. A couple of very significant developments, or I'll let you assess these, but certainly the death of 2 of Iran's most high-profile leaders, including President Ibrahim Raisi, foreign minister as well, a helicopter crash, still under investigation, but obviously the implications here are significant. This story developing over the past couple of days, and obviously we're seeking further details. There's some allegations that there were factors that may have led to that crash, but that's not the point. That's not what I'm asking you about. That's not what I'm getting at. Meantime, the International Criminal Court leadership there is seeking an arrest warrant for Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. The president of the United States, Joe Biden, is calling it ridiculous, but a lot of people are saying that this could lead to Netanyahu resigning. With the death of Iran's president, obviously Iran backing Hamas in this conflict, this war, the Israel-Hamas war, and then the ICC potentially taking action against Benjamin Netanyahu. Bigger picture, what do you think that these 2 factors could contribute, if anything, to the conflict? Could we ultimately see peace in the region?
Benjamin Netanyahu being taken out for any reason is a gift to humanity. I'm not just talking about the Palestinians. I'm talking about Palestinians and Israelis when the full investigation, and there will be one, is done after Netanyahu leaves office, into all of the things that Netanyahu contributed to making sure that that massacre happened and this war happened. When all of it comes out, nobody will have any tears being shed for Benjamin Netanyahu. So as far as the International Criminal Court is concerned, if they have the evidence, go get them.
How much longer do you think Joe Biden, I mean, obviously the U.S.-Israel relationship is time-tested and obviously very strong and consistent, and the U.S. has interest in the region, and there's a lot of reasons why that would continue. But do you think that this could be a losing card for Biden? Do you expect to see any developments there? He's calling it absurd, ridiculous right now.
I think the more Biden is associated with the Israeli effort, the worse it is for him. And I'll call it the youth vote. Naturally, I'm talking about people over the age of 18 in this case, but he's doing very badly with voters between the ages of 18 and 29. No Democrat in my lifetime has won a presidential election when young people aren't voting for the Democrats. So it's a real Netanyahu is the worst thing that ever happened to Joe Biden.
This story, I wanted to ask you about this before we go. The reason I want to get like a little bit personal with you. You probably heard that serial killer Robert Pickton was injured at a Quebec institution on Sunday. He's on life support as of right now when we're talking about this on May 21st, and that could change at any moment. Basically, the detail anybody needs to know is they say that a fellow inmate got to him and used what they said was like a broken off broom type handle and basically stabbed him in the head with it. This is a guy who told an undercover RCMP officer that he was responsible for the murders of 49 women. He's been tried and convicted of the murders in 6. Obviously, I think everybody knows the story. What I wanted to say to you is I found myself like immediately when I saw the headline, to me, I sort of, I just wish maybe that the beating would have lasted longer. This is where I find like in my heart, where my heart goes with this type of thing. I think of the vulnerable women that Robert Pickton terrified and kidnapped and killed and disrespected in horrific ways, their remains and the whole thing. But there was an interesting point that was made. And that point was that there are families who lost loved ones. There are women who were murdered by this man or this man and other people, allegedly, whose murders have not been solved. In some cases, charges have not even been laid in the disappearances of some of these women or the murders of some of these women. Some remains have been found. And Pickton had been reportedly telling fellow inmates that he was in the process of writing a book, in his words, that would, I guess, exonerate him or prove that somebody else did the killing. But police have long suggested that Pickton didn't act alone, that he wasn't alone. And I saw somebody suggesting this morning that in fact, they hope that he does not succumb to his injuries. They hope that this beating is not a fatal beating because they think that the families of those women deserve some answers. And they were hoping that with time, that Pickton, now 74, I believe, would maybe shine some light in those circumstances. And I found myself kind of doing a double take. I don't have a strong position on this one now. I found myself kind of, but this is just like where my internal dialogue went. You know what I mean? Yeah. This is, as I was driving back from Calgary at 4 a.m. today, getting ready to talk to you. This is what I was thinking about for a long part of that drive.
The more you investigate what happened to Pickton and talk to people who were reporters at the time and cops, the more you find out that they really wanted to wrap it up. They just did. They had enough to get him, and they did get him. They got him the life sentence, but it wasn't nearly enough when you're just talking about crying out for justice for those who were murdered and for others. And of course, Pickton probably did not act alone. Most people close to the case believe that there were other people involved. And so for crying out loud, when it comes to justice, there was no justice for many people whose daughters and sisters were never connected to Robert Pickton, even though his bloody hands and the hands of his associates were all over them. So there has never been justice for many people in Canada who are victims of Robert Pickton and his accomplices. But as far as the human perspective is concerned, the fact that Robert Pickton is in the condition that he's in, and the Real Talk timekeeper will love me for this because it will not require any verboseness on my part. I will never ask for thoughts and prayers for Robert Pickton.
Yeah, no kidding, man. I've enjoyed talking things out with you. It's one of the reasons why we're thrilled to welcome you to the show every single week, Chuck, courtesy of our friends at Tice Automotive Consulting. We'll talk to you again next Monday.
Thank you, Alberta. Thank you, Tice. Thank you, Ryan.
You got it. You can find Charles Adler on Twitter. that's kind of one of my areas, man, where people say, like, when you talk about people can go like across the political spectrum or whatever, people go like, what are you left on? What are you right on? And I find and I get that every time I say this, especially every time we say it on a talk show, we get emails from people, and I respect their positions for sure. But when you talk about like capital punishment or the death penalty or like whatever, like tough on crime, mandatory minimums, and a lot of times it's people working in law and advocacy and things like that. They'll say, capital punishment is barbaric. Innocent people have been executed. Like there's a million reasons why it's a bad idea. But I find myself like just being a real human here, like in the most heinous circumstances, just feeling like what we can dish out just isn't adequate. And, so sometimes I find my heart kind of like gets into a bit of a dark place with when you hear about something like this, because you go, good. Yeah. Like, good. I hope it hurt.
I've said this on the show a million times. I believe in rehabilitation. I think everyone has a moral center somewhere deep in that black core. But for me, if you hurt women, kids, or animals, like I just don't think there's any coming. I just don't see people coming back from that. Yeah. And this story is crazy. If you read up, everyone knows who Robert Pickton is, but if you dive deep, if you watch some of the documentaries, like it's clear that his brother or someone else
for sure
was involved in this stuff. You can't prey on this many people without having someone help you, or at least help you dispose of bodies. It was a lot of work, and just again preying on people who are down on their luck. Women involved with drugs and prostitution and just like the weakest people on earth, grabbing them up, and it's the worst.
That's why when we were talking about that comedy troupe out of Alberta that was all pissed off that their Vancouver show was being canceled, the venue canceled after these guys were on the road selling their Robert Pickton t-shirts, like making light of the whole situation. And my thing was like, I'm not a pearl clutching type person, and I understand that comedy needs to push boundaries and yada yada yada, and people are making 9/11 jokes, and people make jokes about all kinds of things. But I just my take on that one was like, man, there's families, there's like unsolved murders. Like it's just not a funny, I don't know. It just felt like certain things. And we got some heat for that for sure. We did, from people that like, that were selective in what we clutch pearls over, that were selective on what subject matter is sacred. But I don't know. I guess you know it when you know it, like you feel it when you feel it. And for different people, it's different things. But for me, I know I'm not alone on this one. That Robert Pickton thing was just wild. So there you go. There's the update on Robert Pickton. May he rot in hell forever. This feels like kind of a perfect segue in the entire point of this weekly feature, don't you think? This is not totally an accident, but every week as we kick off with the first episode, our friends at Kubi Renewable Energy, that is, give us opportunity to focus on the positive, to put the news cycle on hold, and to harness positive energy. It's Positive Reflections presented by Kubi. We always ask for your suggestions on this, and Brinley sent us an email this morning to talk@ryanjesperson.com just a couple of hours before the show. She said, have you seen this story out of Australia? And the answer was no, we hadn't seen it, but this is an amazing one. And I didn't even send this to you, Johnny, so I don't think you've heard of this, but there's this guy, Jamie Rooney, okay? And they live out in this beautiful part of Western Australia, but right near the outback. And everybody's like seen the movies, right? That's not a knife. So you can imagine, like, let's just say if something goes missing in the outback, it's probably going to go missing, especially if it has 4 legs and runs really fast. So Jamie Rooney is out with his best friend, his dog Rocky, who's a staffy, and they pull over near a creek because he wanted to, take a rest or whatever, and probably had to go pee and whatever. So he lets his dog out, and the dog goes for a little swim, and then Jamie Rooney goes back to his car, and when he comes back, Rocky is gone. Like, gone. And so Jamie says, well, earlier that day I was driving past the airport and I could see all these helicopters going up. So he gets on his phone, he Googles online rescue helicopters, he calls a number. The pilot, whose name is Jack Poblowski, says to him, well, it's a bit of a needle in a haystack effort, but let me see. He says, like, once you're 5 minutes out of this town, the town of Newman, Australia, it's just vast outback. He says, I'm not sure I like our chances, but he's going to go. He was an experienced cattle tracker, so he used a helicopter to track cattle. He goes up there. Long story short, he can see tracks in like the red dusty surface of the clay, right? He can see tracks, and he figures that they're either a dingo or a dog. Well, guess what? It was Rocky. And so he lands the chopper, he gets Rocky, and then obviously, the reunion, absolutely amazing. You can learn about it just by Googling the story, but this is a relatively recent story. End of April it happened. It's just being reported. We love it from Brinley, and we thought it was a perfect example of a happy story that could restore our faith in humanity and the power of possibility. Probably not going to find the dog, but found the dog. Who doesn't love that one? Thank you, Brinley, and thank you, Kubi Energy, for helping us focus on the positive the first episode of every week. You can get your free solar quote at kubienergy.ca. Coming up through the rest of this week, we're going to be taking a look at federal political polling. We're going to look at some of the political developments in a couple of the different provinces. And then on Friday, our Real Talk Roundtable is going to focus on innovation. I guarantee you will be inspired. This is a great week to be subscribed to Real Talk. Thanks to all of you who do. We'll talk to you again soon.
Real Talk is hosted by Ryan Jesperson, executive producer Josh Dunford, technical producer John Hicks, general manager Katie Cook-Chivers, account coordinator Lawrence Derlego, human resources Lena Shepard, website design Mike Johnston, voiceover by me, Carrie Skelton. Real Talk's editorial board is Supriya Dwivedi, Ahmed Ali, Brandy Morin, Ann Castleman, Corey Hogan, Harman Kandola, Catherine O'Neill, and Chris Henderson. Member Emerita, Julie Rohr. Real Talk is recorded in Edmonton, Alberta on Treaty 6 territory, the traditional and ancestral territory of the Cree, Dene, Blackfoot, Saulteaux, and Nakota Sioux, home to the Métis settlements and the Métis Nation of Alberta. Real Talk is a relay project. For more, check out ryanjesperson.com.